Yo, it's Bogue. Welcome back to the Beyond the Wormhole series in Kerbal Space Program. This is a part 2 being carried off of our last mission to the desert eyeball planet Metna in the MAELG brown dwarf star system in the Kcalbeloh Planet Pack. And so today's mission is to take off from the surface and rendezvous with our mothership back in orbit around Metna. And then we're going to dock together and then continue on to another planet in the brown dwarf star system called Meiuqer. And what's kind of cool about Meiuqer is it's got this really stretched out elliptical orbit that takes it really close to the brown dwarf star MAELG. And so we're going to be doing a mission to that planet today, and we're going to land on the surface and get some views of what a brown dwarf is like up close. Yeah, so I've just kind of kicked my orbit above the atmospheric line, and then I'm going to execute this circularization burn in just a second to make sure that I'm completely circularized and I'm in orbit. And yeah, this planet has really cool textures. If you are interested in watching my mission to this planet, you just gotta watch the video that I did in my channel right before this. This is kind of a part 2, although you could watch it, I guess, as a standalone if you're just looking for some Meiuqer action in the Kerbal Space Program Kcalbeloh mod. But looks like I just completed my inclination matching burn at an ascending or descending node with my mothership set as target. And so right now I'm just setting up a maneuver node to try to see if I can get a close flyby with those close encounter nodes in the next few orbits. Looks like I'm just going to wait, and we got some really close with these purple ones there. We won't have to spend a whole lot of fuel to get this close flyby, but we'll have to wait a few orbits. So I'm warping ahead until we're coming up on that close encounter, or I guess that close flyby, I mean. Looks like we should be passing real close in the next couple orbits here after I execute that burn. There's our close encounter nodes, or are they close encounter nodes or flyby nodes? I don't know what they're exactly called, but it looks like we've got a pretty small separation, and we'll just be doing kind of like standard docking procedure where we set our nav ball relative to target, and then we burn until our relative velocity there is down to 0. Right now I'm at, looks like I just eliminated it. It's about 0.5, now it's 0. And then you just point directly at your target, burn a little bit further, and then rinse and repeat until you just kind of stop, and there it is. Yep, so we're pulling up. Yeah, and I guess I should tell a little bit about my mothership craft. Is this brown dwarf star system is a lot closer to the black hole in the Kcalbeloh system, and as you get closer to the black hole in the Kcalbeloh system, the amount of delta V required to like circularize or do any sort of maneuvers around these planets down here gets exponentially more and more. So like it takes a ton of delta V to get down here. I've been able to explore the Sun-Orc system and the Urlum binary star system with fully stocked parts, but for the black hole system and this brown dwarf system, I've had to use the near future tech mod, and I'm using a Magnetoplasmadynamic thruster to power this craft. Looks like I've set my escape velocity to kind of just kick out of Metna's orbit and into a solar orbit around the brown dwarf MAELG. I'm executing that real quick, but I guess while I'm doing that burn, I could talk a little bit more about the engine again. So yeah, it's like an engine that's included in the near future propulsion suite of the near future tech mod, which includes just like an expansion of the tech tree. So you get some near future parts. Like a lot of them are just like more advanced ion engines, but these magnetoplasmadynamic thrusters are, first, I guess a lot of words, but second, basically it shoots out like ionized gas with a huge electromagnet powered by a fusion reactor, and I'm powering that with a fusion reactor part that's also included by one of the sections of the near future tech mod. And so yeah, it's by Nertea, really good mod. Highly recommend it for all of your high delta V needs. And so I've just set another maneuver to not circularize, but to match my inclination with Meiuqer. It's a pretty big burn, looks like 2,500 meters per second. But like I was saying, these magnetoplasmadynamic thrusters are really efficient, so we have the fuel for these huge maneuvers in this mission. You need like a lot of electricity generated per second to like power these engines, which is kind of interesting. So you see I have some radiators around kind of the core of my ship. That's where my nuclear fission reactor is on the ship, and that's generating a lot of heat and a massive amount of electricity per second required to power this engine. And so you might see me clicking on it from now and then, but it's basically like to save on the lifespan of the reactor. As we're doing these maneuvers through space, I only turn on the main reactor when I need to fire my main engine. But for all of their systems on the ship, I'm using just these small stock RTGs to provide the power. It's only this main engine that requires the insane amount of power that the reactor is really needed for at full power. And now I just have another maneuver set to just kind of lower my apoapsis just a tiny bit more so that my orbit is intersecting Meiuqer, which I've set as my target on the map screen. And then I'm going to try to see how much it's going to cost delta V wise to match orbits with it. So like when you are orbiting something, what you've essentially done is matched orbits with it. So that's kind of how you can, well, I guess the reason I say this is Meiuqer is really small. It's a really small minor planet, if you will. But one of the things about that is since it's so small, it has a really small sphere of influence. So the way that we're going to be going about setting up getting an encounter with it is going to be a lot like docking. Since we're going to have to kind of play around with the maneuver node to actually get an encounter, we're going to be making use of the close encounter flyby nodes, just like in docking, to see our closest approach and then adjust from there. Yeah, so that's how we're going to be doing this. Right now I'm just executing that retrograde burn to try to match orbits a little bit more, and then once we're closer to the final orbit, we can figure out those maneuver nodes. Looks like in a few orbits I have kind of a natural flyby. I'm going to go with that and just adjust it until we have our encounter. Okay, looks like we have our encounter there. Looks like it'll be like 2 or 3 months till that maneuver, but now that we're at the maneuver point, we'll just go ahead and execute that burn real quick for just a really small 300 meters per second. And looks like we have that encounter for real now. Cool. And so let me zoom in here and see what my approach is looking like. You can see kind of already that the sphere of influence is really small. Also, if I remember right from the science readouts on my test mission, it's not a very dense planet either, which is kind of interesting. So it's not as tightly packed as some other planets in terms of how compressed the material is, if that makes sense. So we've pulled up on the planet, and since we're pretty high in the planet's elliptical orbit around the brown dwarf, which are already really dark stars to begin with, there's not a whole lot of ambient light in the at this distance to light up the planet, so it's going to be kind of a dark situation here until we're further along in the planet's orbit around the brown dwarf, and then we'll have a little bit more light. But looks like I'm just about to circularize, or not circularize, but capture. And yeah, this planet has really, really low gravity, so maneuvers around the system cost almost no delta V. Which is great for us, especially with such an efficient engine. Let's get some screenshots. The black hole in the distance there. This is the closest I've ever been to the black hole in my series so far. After this system is complete, so I guess after this episode, the only thing that we'll have left to explore in the Kcalbeloh system is the local black hole system, which are the planets that orbit the black hole really, really close, as if the black hole was its home star, if you will. Cool, so now we've circularized around Meiuqer, and it's time to set up our landing. Just looking for like a flatter spot, but let's get out on a spacewalk and get into our lander. Looks like there's someone already in there actually from our last mission. We'll just let him go. But let me transfer some of my extra fuel so that I can reuse this lander. Turn on the engine and we'll start that deorbit burn. I'm going to kind of burn normal a little bit so that we land in that kind of flat patch over here. The low light levels of the brown dwarf kind of give the reflections off the mountainous terrain of this system's planets, kind of gives them like an undead, like eerie feeling, which is pretty cool. You can even see like the banded clouds of star plasma from the low light of the star. You can see even through it, kind of. It's not too glaringly bright. We're about to land. Just got to kill off that relative velocity so that we're not going to hit the ground. Take a view from the inside of the capsule. We kill off our relative velocity pointing retrograde. And we have touchdown. Looks like a safe touchdown. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the lights and warp ahead till the planet moves a little bit closer to the brown dwarf so we can get a better view. And look at that view, it's crazy actually. I'm gonna extend that ladder and go out for our first steps on the surface. Check out that view. Let's see if we can take a surface sample. It says that it's a rubble pile type asteroid owing to its substantial radius in spite of it having a weaker surface gravity than Gilly, this small moon of Eve, which is even smaller than this planet Meiuqer, which I guess maybe even might be classified as an asteroid, if not a minor planet at least. I'll just walk around on the surface a bit more, jaunt around, get some cool screenshots, but other than that, I'll let you guys just watch for now. Okay, I think maybe it's time to go back, though. We've seen kind of just a bit of everything. Let's get some more shots, though, right before we leave. The family photo album. But let's get back in the lander cam there. And now we have to start planning our rendezvous with the mothership. So I'm just kind of waiting in the orbit until it kind of passes like close overhead. And then I'll just take off and then try to catch up to it, and then we'll just do a correction burn to make sure that we have a flyby on like one or two or three next orbits, something like that. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of just making sure I'm lined up with the target node, as I've set the mothership as my target. Anyway, look at these views, crazy. The shadow effects and the textures on this planet are actually kind of unreal. Alright, now we're in orbit. Gotta do that inclination adjustment to make sure that we're matched. Looks like we're got a really low inclination now, and then we'll just set up that close flyby. Alright, cool. Looks like we got a really low separation. And there it is, just under a kilometer out. We'll just wait till we're really close to kill off our relative speed. And then point towards the target, burn towards it, then kill off our speed again when we pull up real close. Standard docking operating procedure. Now we're just getting close to 100 meters out. We'll just burn retrograde till our separation is 0. Then I'll just do this quick little spacewalk back over to the capsule. Cool, and we'll just leave that bad boy in orbit. It's not going to bother anybody. But now it's time to start thinking about our return journey back to the Kerbal system. And so what we're going to have to do is, since the system that the Kcalbeloh Mod places the wormhole in that connects back to the Kerbal system is in a higher orbit above the brown dwarf star system. We're going to have to exit the brown dwarf system in the prograde direction that the system is moving. And then that'll raise our orbit on the other side of the black hole, as you can see there. And then we can have it intersect that higher orbit of the next solar system over, which is the Sun-Orc system. The Kcalbeloh Planet Pack places the wormhole that connects this system back to the Kerbal system around a planet called Sarah in the Sun-Orc system. So it's going to be kind of a big burn, 3,000 meters per second of delta V. And then once we're captured around the system, we will try to set up kind of what I call a thread the needle maneuver through the wormhole to get back to the Kerbal home system. And that's because you actually don't need to circularize around the wormhole to enter it. So the wormhole that the Kcalbeloh Planet Pack Mod places, to enter it, you just have to dip below 30,000 meters. And then you'll kind of even preserve your velocity even through the wormhole. So like if you were to circularize around the wormhole and just kind of dip below 30 meters, like your periapsis below that, but you were still captured, you would still be in orbit around the wormhole on the other side and have to spend more fuel to escape onto your next target. So I usually don't circularize around the wormhole, and I just kind of thread the needle on the way through, and then you preserve kind of like an escape trajectory out of the wormhole system on the other side. And so then you can make your, maneuvers from there to get to your actual target, but it kind of eliminates the capture / escape process from the wormhole itself. And while I was saying that, I'm just setting up one more, or I guess probably not one more, I do these all the time, but another inclination match burn of my target, which is the Sun-Orc system. I kind of just try to match everything on inclination wise. Like, it really helps with just accuracy in your maneuvers. You won't like miss your chance to make any adjustments. Since you'll be on the same plane, you won't miss your chance where the planes are intersecting. And it's really helpful if you're trying to like set up any sort of gravity assists. But I'm just trying to see if I can do a little maneuver to get a flyby of the Sun-Orc system in the next few orbits. Looks like I would have to wait like several decades to get a natural flyby, so I'm going to force one with a radial burn, which is rather terribly inefficient for 3,800 meters per second of delta V. But we have about 14,000 meters per second of delta V, owing to the really great efficiency of this Magnetoplasmadynamic thruster here that I'm using from the Near Future Tech mod. So I'm just going to be forcing the encounter because I have the delta V, and then my Kerbals won't have to be cooped up in their capsule for like another several decades, especially since it's been like probably over 94 years since we started, I guess, judging from the clock in the top left, which I think maybe even resets once you touch down on a celestial body. So we've probably been in space even longer than that. But it looks like we just got our encounter, and I'll be focusing in here on the Sun-Orc system. I'm doing like a little retrograde adjustment to make sure that my flyby kind of passes through at the orbital height of Sarah, which is our target planetary system. It's this one kind of in the middle there that I've just stopped my orbit at. And so what we're going to do is on our flyby here, we're just going to capture around the star system, and then on our next orbit, we'll work on setting up a flyby of the Sarah system in which we can do that wormhole flyby, because the wormhole orbits the planet Sarah almost as if it were like a small moon. But yeah, you can see the star system in the distance there. We'll warp ahead a couple months, and then we've entered the star system. It's time to do that capture burn for about 2,000 meters per second. All right, now that we're captured, let me set Sarah as my target. We're going to do an inclination match burn once again. You can see me like shutting off and turning on that nuclear reactor every time I want to use the main engine. I do that so that I can preserve the lifespan of the reactor and to like reduce the chance of like it overheating and exploding. But it looks like I just did a little adjustment and we got an encounter with Sarah, as well as kind of a really big speed reduction from a retrograde burn, which should be helpful, so that we don't get ejected into some really crazy high solar orbit on the other side of the wormhole in the Kerbal system. Having kind of a lower relative speed probably makes it so that your orbit on the other side of the wormhole won't be so extreme that you have to correct on the other side of the wormhole, if that makes sense. Pretty confusing, but stuff that I learned just from playing the Kcalbeloh mod myself. And so you can see the wormhole here. It's that furthermost orbit around the planet Sarah that I'm just about to set as my target. I'm trying to line up my orbit with its orbital plane at the moment, but there, I've just set it as my target. And then I'm just going to be playing around with those close encounter nodes, and I'm going to be trying to get my encounter at my planetary periapse as relative to like my trajectory through the planetary system. That'll also reduce the chance of me getting like flung in any weird like direction on the other side of the wormhole. Just trying to reduce the chance of like my trajectory being thrown off into some weird direction on the other side. But yeah, it looks like we've got our encounter kind of set up. I'll be doing like some minor adjustments once we're in the system to make sure that I'm on the right plane, as you can see here, and to just double check that that periapsis is below 30,000 meters to ensure that we will actually jump through the wormhole. Looks like we've got it set up. So I'll just warp ahead until we're in view of the wormhole. There it is. Okay, we've exited the wormhole and we should be in the Kerbal system now, so I gotta zoom out and reselect the Kerbal system as my focus. But there's the gas giant Sarnus in the background. I've been playing this mod with the Outer Planets mod, which adds like a Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto analog to the Kcalbeloh system. But you don't need it to play the Kcalbeloh system, because if you don't have it installed, it'll just place the wormhole around Jool. But I love the Outer Planets mod. I feel like it is an unofficial DLC to the original system. And who doesn't love ringed planets? So it's really a shame that Kerbal Space Program 1 never had one of those officially, but it does thanks to the Outer Planets mod. So what I'm doing is I just set Kerbal as my target, but since I'm in such a high solar orbit above Jool, like Sarnus is even further, I'm gonna have to do a really big retrograde burn for about 1300 meters per second to drop my periapsis all the way down towards that little sun there in the distance to intersect with Kerbin, which is that really small orbit that I've highlighted gold in my map view. And it looks like we're kind of just like luckily gonna get an encounter straight off the bat. That's just really lucky. Didn't have to do any adjustment. But I'll have to adjust the flyby, of course, so that I can start setting up my re-entry profile, because I have this capsule that will detach from the rocket and have a heat shield that will protect it from the re-entry heat. Or so I thought. So actually, from the overheating of the reactor, the heat that the reactor's been producing, I've been unaware of this the whole mission, but I'm about to discover that the heat of my reactor has actually stripped away the ablator, or like the which is basically like the heat shielding on the back of my capsule. So like trying to re-enter Kerbal at such a high like interplanetary speed would probably be fatal for sure. So, but since I have about 5,000 meters per second remaining in my craft, I'm actually going to capture around Kerbin to reduce that relative velocity when I eventually do re-enter the atmosphere. So that's what I'm doing right now. You can see the city lights, courtesy of environmental visual enhancements, I believe, which is one of the visual mods I have installed here to just make the game look a little bit prettier. Okay, now that we're captured, I can rest assured that I won't be re-entering the atmosphere at such a high relative speed. So now I'm just gonna dip that periapsis into the atmosphere and hope that my ablator shield on my capsule here doesn't explode, even though it has no ablative heat shielding left. But I'll detach, point that end forward. You can see I have no more heat shield left, but luckily the re-entry physics in KSP aren't too unforgiving. So looks like we're through the thick of it. Deployed the chutes, and it looks like once those parachutes catch, it's looking like a mission success. So yeah, thanks guys for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe. I come out with these like basically every week, and I got some cool stuff coming up, thinking about doing some colony stuff, as well as starting to plan my black hole expeditionary craft to the planets that orbit close to the black hole. But thanks for watching guys, I'll see you in the next one. See ya.